So thank you for inviting me to talk as part of the University of Bath's TEDx series. I feel very privileged to have been asked, and I acknowledge that this is an opportunity that many do not have. In this talk, I'm going to share with you some of the knowledge that I've gained through working with companies on issues of belonging over the past couple of decades that are particularly relevant to higher education. When I was working as a diversity consultant for a change management company, one of our executive directors gave me a book that was going to change how I approached inclusion. It was a book that brought together some of the teachings of philosopher Krishnamurti. Now, the key message that I took from this book was, you think you are thinking your thoughts, but you're not. You're thinking culture's thoughts. This was back in 1998, so long before unconscious bias had become a buzz phrase associated with diversity work. But it really started me thinking about how we are held captive to our environments and our experiences, and how this then develops a default way of thinking, socially conditioning our brains to the known, a known that makes us feel secure with a sense of belonging, a sense of the we. But is this real? This sense of we is born out of a desire to belong without ever really knowing the me. We become slaves to the thoughts of others crafted by the society around us. And we hold on to those thoughts as a false identifier of the me. So how do we break free from this known? If we hold on to default groupthink as meaning me, how do we move towards a genuine we? Krishnamurti also wrote that our thoughts arise by connecting to memories. So even when reading or discovering something new, in order to understand it, we have to attach it to a frame of reference based on a memory. Now, memories are past, therefore thoughts are past. This means that challenges are often met in terms of the past, a past known. When we're surrounded by those that have similar memories, so they're from similar backgrounds, similar experiences, and have similar understandings, that creates a cultural groupthink. And that's when we're limited by our thoughts, as not only are they past, but they're also the same past. So those thoughts have created assumptions, beliefs, and a default acceptance of what is right. If we start to add in other people outside of the cultural groupthink, we get new memories, and therefore we get new thoughts. Challenges are suddenly met from different perspectives, thus creating true cognitive diversity and innovation. But welcoming in those new ways of thinking, breaking the default way, requires courage, as we're breaking away from a me that desires belonging from the known. Now, this is particularly important to academic establishments. Moving from being imprisoned by the known, the default truth, to a freedom of thought, that is an important step towards creating freedom of inquiry and innovation. So cognitive diversity is really important to higher education. Now, there are many examples out there where the known has had a dramatic negative effect. Things like Google's image identifying algorithm that didn't recognize black faces. That was working within the known. Apple developing a health calendar tracking app that basically forgot about periods. That was working within the known. NASA's Columbia shuttle crash. That was caused by a consistent error that had never been known to cause problems before. So that was working within the known. H&M advertising a child's t-shirt saying coolest monkey in the jungle on a black child. Again, working within the known. FaceApp allowing users to edit selfies into different races, permitting a digital black face. That was working within the known. Crash test dummies, representing a very specific man, that results in more women being more likely to be killed or injured within a car crash. That's working within the known. Now, I could go on and on. There are so many examples out there of big failures, as well as everyday discriminations at a global, organisational and individual level. But let's take a minute just to think about what is belonging. Belonging is a need to be included. Organisations will often strive to be diverse, but without belonging, minority groups will either mask their authentic self, hide, or leave. So we have to consider belonging on a number of different levels. Firstly, community. That's the social belonging. So that's the physical and cultural environment. Secondly, connection. That's the emotional belonging. So that's about fostering meaningful relationships. Contribution. That's the intellectual belonging. So that's where we feel that we're all able to contribute to the outputs. And contemplation. That's about our spiritual belonging. That's where we can all feel that we can pursue our meaning and purpose. And when all of that works together, that's when we have a true bid to belong. That's when we can say that we truly have inclusion and belonging. However, the majority's group's known impacts on the way things are done. So this can often then create barriers to belonging. The majority's known is at the heart of the hidden organisational iceberg. It influences our social codes, our habitual processes, unwritten rules, values, dynamics, the stories, everything that underpins an organisation, what the organisation is built on. These are the foundations then of the seen organisation. They influence the strategy, the structures, the policies, procedures, and environments of how an organisation does things. So by uncovering the unseen organisation, the hidden underbelly, the real drivers, you can then expose the knowns. And then you can be able to actually craft a new vision, a new set of values to underpin the organisation from an inclusive lens. Now, this needs to be done at an institutional level, as well as at a local and individual level, to be able to really see those inherent barriers to belonging. And we're always learning. We are always opening up our eyes to more of the unjusts within society. So this is a continuous exercise. This is where external and internal drivers are really needed to open up our eyes in order to integrate genuine change. So we've established that the me is socially conditioned and it's not based on the authentic self. So why do we hold on to it so tightly? Why do we never really want to own our own story? Why do we disengage in order to self-protect? Well, there are a number of reasons. First of all, the known makes us feel comfortable. We feel that we belong to a large group and that keeps us safe. Even if deep down the group's values do not have the same value as us, and it's just contributing to a perpetual set of values that ensures the group survival. Secondly, the pain of not belonging sits with them rather than us. So it's creating that them and us mentality, giving the group a common other. And then the pain of daily microaggressions and discriminations sit within the minority group. The lack of visual representation, that just reinforces the majority's known. The everyday lack of something reinforces the default norm. You can't see what you don't know is missing. This then creates a lack of comfort with difference. And that naivety creates sort of a clumsiness, a fragility, which then leads to a protectionism of the known. The desire to belong places such an emphasis on protecting what is known and defending that as the default truth. This and all feeds into a lack of recognition that the known is a problem, a lack of institutional recognition that things need to change at a systemic and cultural level, meaning that change is done at a local level until it becomes overwhelming. The demand becomes overwhelming for more to be done. Now, it's all worth noting that basically we can all be both the victim and the villain at the same time in different people's narratives. So the story of anyone working within human rights puts into context that one person's terrorist is another person's freedom fighter. So anyone who challenges the known, the default way of things, is going to be negatively defined by someone. And what this does is this then creates a fear of questioning the known, coupled with a knowing that it needs to be changed. And as a result, words like racism, privilege, diversity, they become dirty words. They become words that are toxic, words to run away from rather than towards. And this unfortunately then allows the misogynoir, the disableism, or the isms to exist because they are protected by this insidious, covert oppression. Now, this duality of representation means that we have misogyny without sexists, we have racism without racists, because no one wants to take responsibility for the perpetuation of the known. When we deny discrimination within the known, we basically perpetuate the narrative that others are inferior. And denial is indeed, unfortunately, the response that a lot of organisations will give. And say things like, the evidence is not robust enough. It just doesn't happen here. And other rationalising excuses such as, they don't work in this sector, or we live in a white area. Now, I'm told that it's my role to help underrepresented groups find their voice, to support them and help them fit in and achieve. I fundamentally disagree with this. The deficit is not in the minority groups, it's in the systems and culture. Minority groups already have a voice and they are using it. What we have to do is enable them to be truly heard, and for the majority to find the courage to be vulnerable, to break free from the me and embrace a new we, by actively listening and willingly changing the systems so that it's agile and we can all belong. So what is the way forward? Well, firstly, we have to become comfortable being uncomfortable. This quote by Joseph Campbell: "The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek." Now, some of you will be aware of this quote as it's been brought to life by George Lucas, who referenced it in the Star Wars film, The Empire Strikes Back. And Dr. Georgina Brown, someone who has strongly influenced my work and understanding, in her book Dare to Lead, and a wonderful blog that I encourage you all to read, called In You Must Go, Harnessing the Force by Owning Our Story. To be inclusive, to create true belonging, what we must ultimately do is to confront our fear. So be courageous, enter that cave, do the self-reflection, acknowledge your feelings and wrestle with the hard emotions, create that growth mindset. Then have the respectful but tough conversations, as we need to be able to talk about racism, we need to be able to discuss sexism, we need to be able to be honest about privilege and power, and most importantly, we need to be able to do that with a kindness of our hearts. Now, we're all humans. We're going to get this wrong occasionally, and that's okay. It's better to learn from mistakes than to never enter that cave. Another quote that really resonates with me came from the director of the London School of Economics. "In the past, jobs were about muscles. Now they're about brains. But in the future, they'll be about the heart." And having just given a talk at the first ever KindFest conference, we can see this change happening within corporations. Kindness is now becoming a vital part of leadership. By creating a culture that is based on trust and kindness, we can start to talk more openly about our biases. without blame, without judgment, or without misunderstanding. As Dr. Georgina Brown has demonstrated throughout her research, this will require vulnerability and courage. Courage to live our values, to think something different and to voice it, to question the default norm. Self-reflection is often painful. As we hold a mirror up to ourselves, we'll see things that we did not know were there. But change is inevitable. We have to adapt to continue to be relevant. It is that of which will lead an organisation to thrive on mutual respect, understanding, true cognitive diversity and belonging. There's often a misunderstanding around what it is to be kind. Being clear is being kind. Having tough conversations with a wholeness of heart. Being transparent is being kind. Doing the brave work and standing up for others, that is being kind. Often it's confused with being nice. And during my time as a consultant, I've worked with many organisations that have claimed to be nice. But when you've scratched at the underbelly, it shows that niceness is a mask. It's a persona, a fake persona to hide behind, to avoid having to challenge the known. There's a wonderful African term, Ubuntu, which basically means I am because we are. It means we only exist because of each other. We are here to simply affirm others. Now, to me, that's the building blocks of a strong community. It is that collective understanding of the value of diversity that organisations need to foster. Deloitte's report, The 8 Powerful Truths, really provides us with an understanding of the 6 signature traits that an inclusive leader must have. But I believe they're traits that we all need to foster as we work towards inclusion. Commitment. Being deeply committed to diversity and inclusion because it aligns with our personal values so we can articulate this authentically. Courage, so that we can bravely challenge the status quo. A recognizing of our own biases, the blind spots, the flaws in the system. Curiosity, having an open mind and being deeply curious about others and listening without judgment. Being culturally intelligent, so we're attentive to others' cultures and we adapt as required. Collaboration, sort of empowering others to create the conditions where diversity of thought is able to flourish. Now, some might wonder, why is this important? Why are we wasting our time bringing feelings and emotions into the workplace? Well, there are 3 levels of impact if we don't. The global, the organisational, and the individual. And just picking a few examples from these. At the global level, we risk building bias and discrimination into global projects, such as algorithms and our response to worldwide disasters. At an organisational level, so the university level, we risk not being able to attract and recruit and retain the greatest talent, as staff and students are going to be more attracted to environments where they can be and thrive as their authentic selves. At an individual level, we risk living in an echo chamber, often amplified by social media algorithms. That means that we cultivate tensions between groups, creating an increasingly polarized view of the world. So my request to you is, practice self-reflection in your known and act in accordance with your true values and a kindness of heart in a bid to belong. And I pledge to you that I will continue to do the brave work with kindness. Thank you so much for listening.